Welcome to the SpaHive podcast. We're your hosts, Julie Pankey
and MaryAnn, spa leaders, business strategists, and business besties who are pulling back the curtain on what it actually takes to grow a business and a life you don't secretly want to escape from.
This is where leadership meets honesty, where revenue meets relationships, and where we talk about the things no one puts on Instagram.
So, if you're a business owner, an entrepreneur, or a high achiever who's building something meaningful, but also navigating team dynamics, burnout, boundaries, and big goals, you're in the right place.
No highlight reels, no sugarcoating, just real conversations, practical strategy, and a little laughter along the way. Let's get into it. Hello, and welcome back to the SpaHive podcast, our Business Besties podcast. I'm Julie Pankey, and I'm here with my business bestie, MaryAnn. Good morning, MaryAnn.
Good morning, Julie Pankey. It's nice to have you back on the podcast. Last week I missed you. Anyone who hasn't tuned into last week's podcast was a good one. It was solo me, so obviously it was great. But I dug into one of Julie's most listened to podcasts in the past. So past Julie podcast. So go back and take a listen to that one. That one was fun. But Julie, I'm so happy to have you back in the studio today.
So great to be back. I was
How
on
are you?
vacation. I was good. I am good.
I was good, and then I came home, and now I am no longer good.
And now I'm tired.
Yeah, that's how that works.
No, I'm great.
Awesome. Well, what are we talking about today, Julie?
Well, today we're talking about Gen X versus Millennials. How are we different? Are we different? Are we really that different? And, which one of us broke society?
Yeah. See, I don't know. I mean, I'm going to blame it on you because I'm not taking fault for breaking society. I take fault for a lot of things being a millennial, but breaking society, no. No, I will not. But let's get into who exactly is Gen X and who is millennial, right? So Gen X was born roughly, give or take a couple years, 1965 to 1980. And millennials were born roughly 1981 to 1996. So that would make I am your resident millennial and Julie is our resident Gen X.
Indeed I am.
Like Julie, when I was going through this podcast, I love the idea of it, right? But I also feel like you're sort of millennial.
Yeah, I'm definitely not.
But you have to think about it because you might be a secret millennial. Okay, because this is what I was thinking. First off, things that you love that not really all Gen X stereotypically love, right? So these are all stereotypes. So, come at us if you want to, but whatever. So things that you love that stereotypically Gen X does not love. You love the wellness culture. You love emotional conversations. Maybe you don't love emotional conversations. You love to sleep track and you love a healing journey. And of course, you love skincare, spa trends, and all things wellness. So maybe you're a secret millennial.
No, I think that everyone loves those things now. It's the evolution of technology. I mean, I didn't get my first computer till I was a freshman in college. Well, my first laptop. I did have a giant computer on my desk at home with dial-up.
Yeah.
And so I think that, I think that, with the evolution of like technology and the whole like post-COVID space, that, I mean, even, our baby boomers are, more in touch with like wellness trends and self-care. So I think that it is more of like an overall like awareness in society.
Yes, but I don't know, I always feel like you're younger. You're younger. That's what I always do feel like that, which is nice, right? Thank you, MaryAnn. That's so nice.
Thank you. I am
Um,
younger.
I
I
am
just
younger.
I just put in my chat GBT why MaryAnn is secretly a Gen X. And it said MaryAnn acts like a millennial until something inconvenient happens, and then suddenly she becomes a 1987 divorce contractor named Rick. You've got to admit that's kind of funny.
I mean, that's really funny because I changed my whole gender too. Wow. All
I
right.
know, right? A 1987 divorce contractor named Rick.
I feel like he's gonna be like, look, I'm gonna give it to you straight.
Look, wave to your kids at the bus.
Well, yes, yes. Look, don't be a schmuck and wave to your dang kids.
I forgot what I was saying. I forgot where this episode was going.
You know what? I don't know. I felt like I was giving you all these compliments, and I feel like I was just slightly insulted.
I think it's so funny, and it's true. I mean, you do have a truck driver mouth outside of the podcast.
Outside the podcast and inappropriate situations.
At home with George.
Yes, not around the children. We had a big discussion. George and I had a big discussion about swearing, cursing, whatever you want to say, in front of children the other day.
You did?
And yes, and it wasn't because George and I we both don't curse in front of the children.
Right.
Nor do we curse at our children, right?
Yes.
But you get me alone without any like kids under 18
Yes.
and it's flying around. It is flying around.
So how do you hold it in?
I don't know. I think it's a superpower. And I've been that way for a long time. Like, even when I didn't have kids and I was around my nieces and nephews, like, no one ever had to tell me, like, oh, ooh, bad word,
Yeah, like,
because
ooh,
sometimes,
kids
yes,
present, which I
right.
do
Like,
sometimes when I voice message you. And I try to be super careful because I know you might play them out loud.
yes, no, it's fine. But I also don't mind, like, if my kids hear it out of people's mouths, right? Because I'm like, I can't filter other people and I wouldn't want
Yeah.
to. And, they need to learn, like, okay, there's just some things that kids don't say, in my mind, right? But I don't know how I filter it out. I think it's a superpower.
Yeah. Well,
I
I
mean, unless I,
remember
like,
one time.
stub my toe.
Well, I remember one time Layla and I were coming from the Seacoast Science Center, and she was probably 3, and I was trying to merge in Portsmouth, like right before the bridge.
Yeah,
And I was in the wrong lane that ended. And so the cars were like, I was like, oh my gosh, I'm going to run out of road
yeah.
because cars weren't letting me in. And I go, shit. But I yelled it because I'm like, what am I going to do? And then I was like, oh my God, Layla's in our car seat in the back because she goes, what, Julie? What? And I was
What
like,
is going on?
And I was like, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. This cannot be this kid's this kid's word. Like, she cannot go home and swear and it be my fault. And so we're driving over the bridge in Portsmouth and I said, Chips, do you see the ship?
Ships.
And she's like reaching out of her car seat. She would
Yeah,
always go like, she goes, I'm too short. I can't see. It's too high. Like she was always trying to push herself up
yeah.
over the window to see. And then she goes, I see. I see. Those are big ships. And then she said, Julie, ships are the same as boats. And I said, yes, yes, they are. And
Yes.
I thought, thank you, God, for giving me that out because I did not want her to go home and swear and I never did it again. It just like escaped out.
Yeah, you're like, not on my watch. It's not going to happen.
Not on my watch is she using swear words. No word. No way. All right. So we have I think you have a statistic, right? Some
Yeah, so
statistics?
I've got a couple of statistics. So to jump back in, let's talk about millennial burnout a little bit. So, statistic from Deloitte found nearly half of millennials report feeling stressed or burned out all or most of the time, which we know, like, that's not anything new. But what I find interesting is it feels like millennials, and I can connect with this. It feels like millennials became the optimization generation, right? Everything became something to improve, something that we need to perfect, something we always need to work on, something that it's always a journey. So things like parenting, 100%, there is so much pressure, whether you're going to gentle parent, you're too gentle, you're too strict. There's about a billion parenting influencers that are telling you probably doing it wrong and you're probably yelling too much. Other things we want to improve is our careers, our wellness, our productivity. Everything is a hack these days. Our relationships and healing, right? Like, I do feel like millennials are one of these first generations to really feel like they need to heal everything, which
Right, right.
I'm not mocking it. You know what? Healed people are probably better people. So let's fill the world with that. But I do think being a millennial, you just have this, how can I do it better? What is the right way to do it? How do I make sure I'm getting the most out of everything?
Right.
So it can be exhausting. Now, we'll switch over to Gen X for a minute. And Gen X is what they call, quote unquote, the sandwich generation. Gen X is more likely than other generations to be caring for both children and aging parents simultaneously, earning them the nickname the sandwich generation. Gen X often grew up with less emotional support, more independence, responsibility earlier on, and that more of the figure it out energy, which I agree with, right? I feel like you have a lot of those traits, right? You're very independent and
Yeah, there
you
was no gentle parenting. It's
right.
like you eat what's on the table or don't eat.
Yeah.
You know,
Right.
you, come home when the street lights come on. Just get outside and play and, stop whining. Too much
Exactly.
TV, like Saturday morning cartoons was it for me.
That was it.
Well, I did watch the Dukes of Hazzard.
That is nice. I mean, I watched a fair amount of TV growing up.
I didn't watch a lot of TV. I did watch some with my parents, like, but mostly, I'd come home and I don't feel like I ever had homework. And then I would go outside and play, and then come in and eat and go to bed. Not a lot of TV time. And, like, there was not a participation trophy.
Yeah.
You either win or you lose.
Oh god. This is where you get it. Your competitive streak of not wanting to play board games.
But also, I think that, Gen X is like, well, your job is supposed to make you tired. And, you stick it out and you stay at a job for, 15 years and don't leave, out of fear of losing like your dental insurance
Yeah.
for your family or, things like that, that I think Gen X was taught to tough it out more.
Yeah.
And so I think now, there are still a lot of Gen X that do tough it out, but then someone like me is like, I'm done toughing it out.
I agree, and I feel like maybe sometimes that's why I put you in that category of you do have some millennial traits, because I not only are you like, "Oh, well, I'm done toughing it out," but I also don't feel like you necessarily advise that either,
Right,
right? And with your teams, currently in the past, I also don't think you make your work environment one in which people need to tough it out, right? So I feel
right,
like
right,
you do have more leadership qualities of being a gentle leader.
right.
uh, or being more of a millennial leader. And you do, I feel like you're like in tune with your emotion.
Yes, and I think that a lot of Gen X probably needs support, but doesn't know how to ask for it, right? Because that's outside of our comfort zone. And it might also be different because of the industry that I'm in,
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, you're just
and I
more,
feel like I've learned a while ago, I mean, a long time ago, that, I have to know like how to manage people as people, like people differently, because, what's important to one person and motivates them is not important to another person and might not motivate them. So managing different generations, I think that, that it's made me maybe a little bit more diverse than a typical Gen X,
yeah,
maybe.
I agree with that.
Um, And again, what I do versus if I was maybe just an office worker or, a flag person for the traffic patrol.
Yeah,
I might feel differently. I might not
absolutely.
be so in tune with my aura data.
Oh my gosh. You and your aura data, I can't even deal with it.
I know. I had minor signs of strain last night, but I do think it's hormonal
Yeah, of
because it
course.
that also falls in line with my like monthly phase, whatever, luteal phase, whatever they call it. Whatever. Who knew we were such complicated humans?
Not Gen X.
Right? So is Julie a secret millennial? No.
I mean, I don't know. I think verdict's still out on that one. Maybe you're just a very youthful Gen X.
That's probably it.
You're like, let's go with that. I
But
always like to tease
millennials
my
do get a bad rap, I will say. Um,
yes. Yeah,
even
they
at
do.
work, the Gen Zs are like, well, she's a millennial.
See, like, and I'm like, what? It is. We do get a bad rap, and I feel like it's softened a little bit because, like, the next generations to come are even crazier, I think. There used to be, I feel like, so much hate on millennials. Like, we have to figure them
Yes.
out. And why are they leaving the workforce? And why are they this? And why do they feel like they need to be told they did a good job? Which is like all, in my mind, like basic human interaction. Like when you're at a job, yeah, you wanna be told you're doing a good job or why are you there, right?
I mean, but my mom told me early on, she told me a few things. Julie, you come into this life alone and you go out of this life alone.
She's
And the only person you can rely on is yourself.
I mean, I
that
get
was
that.
that was one big bit of advice. And the other bit of advice is if you look to someone else to validate your worth in your work, you're never gonna get it.
Understand both those things. I feel like when you look to someone else to validate your work, like, I think you can look at it 2 different
At
ways,
work.
right? Yeah, at work.
Specifically at work, yeah.
Yeah, I think you can look at it 2 different ways. I mean, you definitely wanna know you're on the right track and doing the right thing,
Right.
or you're gonna be second guessing. I feel like for years, millennials we were the problem generation. We were too emotional. We were too soft. We were too entitled. I don't know. I guess, we wanted like healthcare or something. We were ruining industries. And, now we're just like exhausted adults, right? So now all the millennials have grown up. And, I don't understand why we got so much hate to begin with.
Well, now we're all exhausted adults.
Yes, right.
I
So,
think that what I've always said is that, every generation that, after is different than the generation before. And, I say this as, the step parent of two millennials,
right.
um, whose parents are low boomers, not Gen Z, not Gen
Yeah.
X, sorry, not Gen X. But as a Gen X and looking at my parents, right? So my parents wanted to provide a better, more stable life for me than they had. Obviously, they were, higher end boomers.
Right.
And now they call them the silent generation, which is a whole new thing, I guess. I told my mom, I'm like, hey, so I read that in your age group, it's the silent generation. So be silent, Carol. But
Maybe I
anyway,
should tell my dad and stepmom that. Just
right?
joking. My
Because
stepmom
you're,
that would not fly with her.
no.
She is not silent, and God love her for it. That would be funny.
But, want to create a better life. So then us, let's just say like the high end boomers or the Gen X are the parents of the millennials. And so we created what millennials are really, by trying to provide a better life, right? Like I worked at 14.
Yeah.
A lot of millennials maybe didn't get a job at 14. Maybe they got their first job at 16 or 17. I don't know. Like it was a whole different structure. So then it's like, well, I'm going to make my kids' life better, right?
Yeah.
I want to give them more. I want to give them more opportunities. They can be anything they want to be. Versus when Carol was in high school, her guidance counselor said, Carol, you can be a nurse, a teacher, or a secretary. Which do you want to be? And she's like, I want to be a social worker. And she's like, you can be a nurse, a secretary, or a teacher. What do you want to be? And Carol's like, I'll be a nurse then.
You're the
Um,
closest to it, sure.
Right. So like it's different. And so I think that, the product of like millennials are products of Gen Z, Gen X. See, I keep getting
Gen
confused.
X. I know, me too.
Millennials are products of Gen X and boomers, and Gen Z are products of Gen X and millennials. And then Alpha generation is products Gen Alpha, yeah, are products of millennials for the most part. So to see how each generation changes, you look at the generation before, and I think a lot of it comes out of trying to make things better for your children. Sometimes it makes it too easy and makes people like whiny babies.
Yeah, and then
I think it
sometimes
all comes out of, for the most part, a good place, like the evolution
yeah.
of society and trying to create like a better environment. But I also think that millennials, they, went through the 2008, crash. Getting out of, and I've seen this with my own stepchildren, right? Graduating college and not being able to find a job,
Right.
thinking you're going to get out of college and make $80,000 a year. Boom, that easy. And it doesn't happen, having to move back home, with your family while you, find your way. Housing costs increase, right? So it was easy when Carol bought her first house for $50,000.
Yeah.
I bought my house, for $299,000 and, sold it for almost six.
Wow,
Now
yeah.
here are millennials trying to buy houses that are 500,000 and above.
Yeah. So really you're telling me it's your fault.
Yeah, but then stop whining and complaining.
So I'm not whining, nor am I complaining, but I do like to point out things that should be pointed out. Yeah, I mean, maybe it is a little bit different because I am, my parents are not Gen X, right? My parents are
Right.
boomers. And so maybe I was brought up a little bit differently with some aspects. So maybe that does give me some different traits.
So maybe you are a little Gen X.
It's possible. I feel like with my parenting, I'm more millennial than Gen X.
Agreed. Although I haven't had any kids, so I don't know how I would parent them.
Yeah, but You still have an idea, I think.
I don't know. Because when you tell me situations about your kids, I think about, well, if it were Layla, who's my
Yeah.
granddaughter, instead of my own child, I feel like I'm much easier, like I'm much softer. Maybe how I would react with it being Layla versus my own child. So I don't know. But
Yeah.
when I do, like I try to like assimilate so I can relate to your story of how I would feel like if that happened to Layla. And I'm like, well, I'd go on the bus and rip their tongue out of their mouth.
See, exactly. This is what I'm saying.
So I try to. So I think, we do definitely relate with each other.
I agree.
Anyway, let's do our rapid fire.
I was going to talk more about how millennials really saved us from everything. That should be the title of this episode, is why millennials are so great and MaryAnn's leading the charge. Funny story is my sister.
We'd all be too soft.
No, we wouldn't. I'm not a soft person. I'm a nice person and I can appreciate people's emotions. Maybe that's what you think is soft, is having emotions.
No, because you don't show your emotions like most millennials. Most millennials I know are not like cryy, super emotional people. And I'm just thinking of my two stepchildren.
Well, because they were raised by well, no, he's not a boomer, but
Gary's a boomer.
Oh, well then, yeah, because he was raised by a boomer, see?
Maybe that's
Maybe
it.
that's
But
it.
I will say millennials that I deal with as a manager a lot of times are so emotional. And I chalk it up to being in the spa industry because,
You should
everybody's so
next
emotional.
time it's got nothing to do with the spa industry, you should just be like, "And how old are your parents?" And then you'll be able to better manage them. Maybe that's it. Maybe it's not about what generation you were born into, but what generation raised you.
That's true because I do think about two of the leaders right at the hotel that I work with, and both of them were raised by older parents. So they're Gen Z, but they
Yeah.
don't act like the traditional Gen Z. And
See?
both of their parents are Gen X.
See, there you go. Maybe we've debunked the whole thing. There we go.
And we're not even scientists.
I know, right? But I was gonna say, I love right. I was raised by boomers, obviously. I'm a millennial. One, two, three. Three of my siblings are Gen X, which is probably why I get along so well with Julie.
Right.
And my sister closest in my age, she considers herself a millennial.
Is she technically?
I mean, I don't know the year she was born, but I always tell her, I'm like, you're a geriatric millennial.
Well, a millennial is 1981 to 1996. So
I
think
think
about
she's
the year you were
technically,
born.
maybe she's like 80, she might be like 81 or 82. She's probably
So
81.
low millennial, high Gen X.
Yes, geriatric
High
millennial
boomer.
by a boomer. And so I always like to tease her because she really does think that we're the same age and we're not. But let's get into our rapid fire.
Okay. So who said it?
Okay.
I I need to regulate before responding to this email.
So I feel like that's millennial, but I do feel like that's just a good idea in general.
Yes, yes, yes. Yes, and I wouldn't say I need to regulate before responding to this email, but I have learned over the years to not
Yeah.
respond to emails right away because I get hot.
Yeah. Yeah. Especially it depends on what it's about.
Right.
I wouldn't use the word regulate. Maybe I would be like, oh, I need to put this in the parking lot.
But regulate is a millennial word, probably. So that's where it falls into millennial. But yes, we
Yes.
should all think before we respond to an email. Oh,
Who said it? Just call them.
girl, you can answer that question.
That's Gen X.
Totally.
It's
How many
so
times
annoying.
did I used to tell you? Just call them.
I am much better at it now. I am
I
much
know,
better at
because
it now.
that was like uh 12 years ago.
Yes, and I was, young little buck there.
Right.
But I am much better than it now, but I do
I was
still
hoping
hate.
to teach you.
Thank you. But I still do hate when people are like, "Hey, I got your email. Let's talk it through on the phone." And then I have a phone conversation, and it's not like they're trying to argue a point or not agree with it. They wanted me to reiterate exactly what was over email on the phone. And that
Well,
drives
I
me
mean,
insane.
I do think, and I can say this for myself, that people misinterpret my meeting with emails and text sometimes because I'm a fire it off type of person. I oftentimes forget to say hi, good
Yeah.
morning, hope you're well. And I just lead into, so what are we doing with blah, blah, blah. And so people will misinterpret that as me being biatchy, which it's not. So it's just me. Like yesterday, for example, we got an email that was just like, hey, can you blah, blah, blah. And so my response was yes. And one of the Gen Zs was like, oh, you didn't even capitalize the Y. You just responded yes, all lowercase with a period. And I'm like, seriously, I don't think she's reading that much into it. Like, Julie's answering yes, yelling at me. And she's like, well, if you sent me an email with a yes, all lowercase with a period, I'd think you were mad. And I'm like, yeah, but she's not going to think that. And because that's how I am, like
Yeah.
in this particular person, I have responded with a one line with an exclamation point, and she has asked me, did your exclamation point mean that you were upset about this? And I'm like, no, I was just responding with an exclamation point, like blah, blah, blah. Yes, right. You're right. You're right. I am not happy about this exclamation point. I said, and you know what? Now she knows how I communicate, and she's not
Yeah.
losing sleep on my email that just is YES period. And I said, I'd rather respond YES than wondering if you've read the 12 emails I sent you and not responded to.
Yeah, that's true.
So I know that I do that, so that oftentimes if it's something I might be like, well, let's get on a quick call because someone's like interpreting what I say as
Yeah.
being more dramatic maybe than it is. Like, I'm not upset about it, I'm not mad, I'm not losing sleep, but maybe we should talk it through so that I'm not.
I don't know. I feel like people read too much into things. And also, like, not everything needs to be a call. Like, we can just send an
Yeah, but
email.
we're humans, so it's nice to have that human interaction, and especially if it has to do with children, you want to talk to the person and, know if they're really an idiot or you're just thinking they're an idiot.
I mean, 9 times out of 10, they're really an idiot, though.
But
I don't need to be persuaded else, but I get it. I do think that, yes,
and I don't like
sometimes
to talk
just
on the phone either. I mean, I feel like it wastes my time.
if you ask any of my family members, they think that the amount of voice memos we send to each other is diabolical.
Well, yeah, but that's like one-sided. Like blah 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 blah
I
blah.
know. They are like,
And I'll
because,
look down and I'll be
usually,
like, this is a new record, 12 minutes.
and sometimes I'll need to send people I don't know their stance on voice memos, but I'll have to send them a voice memo because I'm like driving or, I'm just doing other things. And so voice memo is the easiest thing for me. And I'll always start off my voice memo and I'm like, so I don't know if you like voice memos or not. Let me know. Because some people are like, yes, voice memo, or they're like,
A
no.
lot of people I know don't like them and they think it's weird. Like, I'll sometimes voice memo to people at work.
Yeah.
And I'll say, hey, I'm just voice memoing you because I don't want you to think that I'm mad about this. I just wanted you to hear my voice when I'm saying this thing versus sending you a text and you thinking, uh-oh, Julie's mad.
So maybe voice memos are like this medium between our constant need for emails and our constant need for calls. So just voice
Right.
memo would be a lot easier.
Right, because then you can hear someone's like inflection,
Yeah.
like the other day I texted, I'm not happy about this. The three of us are gonna have to meet. Things are gonna change. And I was mad.
That sounds
And
terrible.
each sentence ended with a period
Gosh, you use correct grammar? That makes me scared.
because I was like, something's gotta change. Just call them.
How about that? That's trauma, or we're working through some trauma. Who said
Oh my
that?
God. A millennial. I mean, who's had so much trauma? I
Okay, but if you
remember
think about it,
I
we have.
remember this work coach, remember this
Yeah.
crazy business coach that I worked with for a minute who was a whack job? She's
I don't
like,
know.
well,
You've worked with a few I've thought were whack jobs. So,
well, we have to get to the root of, your trauma that's holding
oh, I
you back.
remember that.
And I'm
Yeah.
like, I don't have trauma. There is no root of trauma. Like I wasn't left home alone. I mean, there was that one time that Carol left me at the laundromat by accident.
I mean, that happens.
That
That
was
happens.
traumatic, I will say. But I don't feel like there's like deep rooted childhood
No,
trauma that I can go back to. Like, not everyone has to have trauma. We like
agreed.
move on from it. I mean, of course, people do have real trauma.
Yeah, yeah. We're not saying
And
that,
I don't want to minimize people's real trauma, but not
No.
everyone has trauma that we have to solve.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think there's this interesting thing of like what's trauma and just what's like your experience and if something that happened in your past and maybe that you like, oh, I've never really thought about it, right? I do feel like millennials can sometimes get too deep with trauma. I think that we kind of call everything trauma, and I don't really think
Right,
that's the case. Sure, like, do I think, yeah, we'd all be better off with some therapy? 100%. But I don't think you always need to like unpack some deep rooted trauma. Maybe it's just like, personality traits. I don't know. I do feel like
right,
sometimes that trauma word is like coined and like that's how people monetize things and sell things because they're trying to tell you like, yeah, you need to unpack this. Like, no,
right,
maybe I don't
right,
need to unpack it.
right,
Maybe
right,
I can acknowledge it, right? And not unpack it.
right. Yes, exactly. So, I mean, millennials get so much of the hate, and I'll admit it. As a Gen X, I 100% can admit it, and I know that Gen X is classically known as like a more stoic generation. But I think, at the end of the day, Gen Millennial is more of like the transition generation, like
Yeah.
partly analog, partly digital. You remember do you remember malls? Like going to the mall?
I love them all. No, I hate them all now. I
Yes.
hate malls now. But yeah, we would get dropped off at the mall on like a Friday
Right.
night and we'd go shopping and then we'd get Panda Express at food court because that was the best. 100%.
Yeah, I would get dropped off at the mall and I would get like an Auntie Anne's pretzel or what was that juice? The
Jamba Juice?
kiosk. Not no,
Jamba Juice?
before Jamba Juice.
Mm.
The juicy juice. I can't think what it's called. Somebody's gonna remember at the mall. So we're similar, right? In that way. I feel like, the millennials, were in the middle of like a lot of transition for Gen X. A lot of things were new for us, but you were in the middle of more of like a economic shift, technology shift. And we know that millennials were famed for popularizing feelings. And that's not a bad thing.
Showing some emotion.
Not a bad thing.
Acknowledging feelings.
So maybe we need to acknowledge each other. What millennials can learn from Gen X: resilience, independence, adaptability, not over processing everything. And what Gen X can learn from millennials: having some boundaries, emotional awareness, slowing down and asking for help. And I feel like, those are things that as a Gen X I have learned. Maybe it's been working with you for like nearly 15 years.
I don't know. I can't be that old. But I totally can relate with you. And I felt like when you were saying these things, like what millennials can learn from Gen X and what Gen X can learn from millennials, reminds me a lot of my oldest sister. And she's right around your age, but I do feel like she might be more stereotypical Gen X than maybe you are. And maybe it does have to do with your what type of industry you work in. But I can definitely like relate to that. I'm like, yes, she needs more boundaries. Yes, she needs to slow down. And
I
I'm
wonder, is
perfect.
she
So,
listening to our episodes?
you know what? She better. They're all instructed to. So if she's not, I'm gonna talk about her more next podcast.
Well, I guess our final thought is that, Gen X mastered survival, millennials mastered self-awareness, and maybe the goal isn't to decide who's right, but it's learning from each other before Gen Alpha starts roasting us all equally, because I tell you, on any given day at work, I get made fun of. So maybe every generation is just doing the best that we can, with a world that we've all kind of inherited, and at the end of the day we're just all doing the best that we can, and that's all that we can ask for, and to be supportive of each other, and yeah, be good, kind, supportive humans.
Keep on keeping on.
So don't know what we're talking about next time, but we will see you next week live right here on the SpaHive Business Bestie series.
Bye, Julie. Bye, listeners.
Bye. Thank you so much for joining us today in the SpaHive.
If this episode sparked an idea, made you think differently, or just made you feel a little less alone in business or life, share it with someone who might need it too.
Don't forget to follow the podcast so you never miss a conversation.
And check out the show notes for links, resources, and ways to stay connected with us, including the Spa 101 course taught by our very own Julie Pinky.
We're so grateful you're part of this community.
And we'll see you next time.